Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here once again with our travel attorney, Jeff Miller. We've been talking about a lot of things going on in the industry and different industry categories and segments. What's happening as we emerge from pandemic and how the pandemic has affected these sectors. We have looked at cruises, we have looked at car rentals, and today we're going to look at hotels. So you're going to find out about all the things that are going on with hotels post-COVID as we emerge, and a whole lot more from Jeff Miller on Insider Travel Report. Now, first of all, Jeff, as I always say, how are you and where are you this week? You usually divide your time between Maryland and Florida.
I'm good. We're in Maryland right now. Very, very hot, but not as hot as the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, well, it is pretty hot. We seem to be trying to compete here for
Sure.
summer
Actually,
weather.
I've just come back from a trip to the West Coast to celebrate Father's Day with our family out in California, and traveling is not fun.
Yeah, it can be a challenge, and you just have to get there with it and see what happens. I mean, we all want to travel, but there are definitely some issues traveling. I had that same issue when I was coming back from St. Martin, a lot of lines. And but the choice is not to travel. But if we all wanted to go traveling, we sort of have to put up with some of this stuff or figure out how to make it easier. Now,
Absolutely.
let's talk a little bit about this. Let's get straight to the point. How has the pandemic affected the hotel industry? We've all heard the reports that, aside from the travel agency business, I think hotels was probably hit the hardest.
I think it's dramatically impacted them. There are clearly some hotels that have not reopened that are not going to reopen. I think you're going to see some hotels reflag just to try to cut some of their expenses. They have tremendous problems trying to get help.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that because clearly, ironically, although they had to furlough a lot of employees and going then and then, so a few months later, now that they want them back, maybe those people aren't around anymore.
Well, as you know, I teach at a state university in Florida in the hospitality program. And across the country, the surveys that have been done show that the enrollments for the fall semester are down between 20 and 45%
Wow.
across the country. So students are not coming back to these programs, which go through a doctorate, I may point out. They're not vocational programs. They're degree
Right.
programs, undergraduate, graduate, and doctorate.
And were most of these folks maybe heading towards hospitality to hotels?
They all would be, a lot of them would go into the hotel industry and other parts of the travel industry. But these folks are not coming back. They're taking jobs based on their service background
Right.
in other industries that give better work hours, better pay, better employment opportunities.
Now, do you think a lot of hotels actually went out of business totally and they're not coming back?
I think a fair number have gone out and are not coming back.
Yeah, and what about all these employees that either got furloughed? You mean the same deal where they found other jobs and they're not going to come back either?
I think they found other jobs and they're not coming back. And there was a study done because there was a lot of political questions as to whether the extra money from the federal government for unemployment was keeping people at home and not working. And PhD folks in our faculty who have doctorates and have tenure did a survey, pretty well-renowned survey, that found that's not correct.
Right.
That didn't impact these people from the hospitality industry. They're just leaving. And hospitality in this case would also include restaurants,
Sure.
country clubs, but they're just leaving. They're not coming back to this industry. They got furloughed with no benefits, no notice, and they basically had enough. I mean, in South Florida today, you get $25 an hour to start at a front desk with almost no experience.
Yeah.
A raise of $8 or $10 from pre-COVID.
What's the solution to this right now? How do you think to get the industry staffed up again?
There is no solution until some of these hotels wake up and realize they got to pay really decent benefits, decent salaries, and give people decent working conditions and opportunities for advancement.
All right.
And I don't think that's going to happen in a lot of cases.
Okay. Now, what happened to hotel rates during the pandemic? I know a year ago, this time, it was like crazy time. You could find amazing deals. I remember down in Florida and elsewhere, New York here, those that were open, the ones that were left open, to find a hotel room in New York for under $100 was pretty common. And of course, that's changed recently. But what's your view in terms of what happened back last year?
A couple of different things. The really, really high-end hotels did not and typically do not cut their rates under these circumstances. They're not going to just have their product diminished by having somebody sit at the pool and say, well, I paid $500, but I paid $100. They
Right.
typically, and I don't want to really use names of hotels, but I'm aware of ones that did not cut their rates even when their occupancy was very low. And then initially, not counting those, but the general run-of-the-mill type hotels, they cut their rates dramatically. But I looked at some stuff in Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia for beach type places. And when I looked at the rates for July and August and February, by the time I looked back in May, they had tripled.
Right.
So they realize there's a market there. They're doing in Florida a lot of drive-to market with folks with Georgia and Florida driver's licenses. The same in the Carolinas. So those rates have gone up dramatically, and even in your area, New York, New Jersey beaches, Delaware, Maryland beaches, those rates are astronomical. They can get it, at least as of now, because people just wanted to get away.
Well, they also want to do domestic travel, and that's what they were told to do. They said, let's travel at home, and that's driving up rates. I know that's the fact. In fact, from what I'm hearing, some of my travel agency friends, this is more impetus to say, okay, well, maybe I will go to Europe after all, because the rates over in Europe are pretty good, right now, because they're just trying to come back, and domestically, it's really been a challenge because they're finding it's more expensive to travel here in the U.S. because everybody wants to go domestic.
Yeah, I saw a rate in Marco Island when I priced it in February. It was $135. For the same date in July, when I priced it in May for July, it was $500.
There you go. So we're going
same hotel, same room. They can get it.
You can get it. So I guess the good thing is that they are getting those rates, or hopefully they're getting it. Now, as we emerge from this COVID-19 era, we hope. What is hotel recovery going to look like?
Well, there's two parts to it. Leisure is coming back. Of course, leisure, certain areas is seasonal, as you know.
Right.
Corporate is going to be a long while.
Right.
People aren't traveling.
Yeah, that's the problem, and that business travel is going to be slow to come back from everything we hear, although there are some studies that say it will come back sooner than maybe sometimes we think, but we'll see how it goes. Now, in terms of hotels now offering a healthy, sort of safe environment post-COVID, should guests be concerned still, or do hotels, they pretty much got it right in terms of what they do now?
I think in any name brand hotel, from any of the big hotels and any of their multiple brands, I think they got it right.
Right.
That doesn't mean there aren't some renegades out there that didn't get it right, but generally I think people can be comfortable that they got it right.
Yeah. So that all these health precautions, even though I guess the CDC came out later and said it's not really a surface transmitted disease, it's an airborne disease. So
right.
All those cleaning, all those focus on Lysol and Clorox might not have done. It's not to say that we don't appreciate the fact that they're cleaning. I kind of wonder, like, what did they do before? But at least we know that they're wiping everything down now in a pretty substantial way. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, we talked about the employee issue. How are they hiring back? I mean, how are they getting staff now? Or is it just going to be a perennial shortage?
They are hiring them any place they can find them. I mean, my boss at our program always sends out a weekly list of employment opportunities in the state of Florida. And that list hasn't budged because people aren't filling the jobs. And that's not just entry level, it's all types of positions. I saw an offer for a hotel, not in the Keys, but not Key West.
Right.
They were offering $25 an hour for an 8-hour day. They'll pay all your expenses to get there. They'll pay your living expenses. You'll stay at the hotel. They still couldn't fill the jobs.
Wow. Yeah, so it's going to be a hard slog to get back at this point. Now,
that relates to service.
Yeah. Well, the service is another thing. Yeah, you don't have people who have had that hotel training enough. So, we may be dealing with service issues for a little while, at least for the foreseeable future. So now, as hotels are getting booked out, or they're getting a lot of people traveling domestically, has there been a surge in the case of guests being walked? I mean, are there any in terms of like, no, I'm sorry, we don't have enough room for you? And that
I haven't heard of a lot of people being walked. I mean, a lot of times I get calls from people who got walked, and they went, what are your legal rights? Which
yeah,
have some, but not a lot, because it's a contract. I don't think that's a real issue. I think not all of the hotels are anywhere near 100%, trying to fill it at 100%, so they have rooms. I'm not talking about the beach resorts, in Carolinas or Georgia or Florida, but generally they're not booking at 100% capacity deliberately because they don't have the staff to service it.
Right.
The last thing these hotels want, particularly the nicer ones, is to have a lousy experience because they don't have any staff.
Right. No, that's the challenge, and as you said, I'm not sure what kind of recourse guests have, even if they are getting walked.
Well, it's a contract, so you have some legal rights, but it is what it is. Most people hate lawyers, so you don't go near lawyers.
Absolutely, yeah, you can't win there. Let's see what happens. Like, all right, so let's talk a little bit about what should travel advisors be concerned about in this new hotel environment as we emerge from the pandemic. What should they be worried about?
Well, the first thing you should be worried about are what are the requirements from a safety, from a CDC standpoint, because it seems to vary all over the place. I now walk into any place carrying a face mask, going to find out whether I need it or not.
Right.
Of course, my view is the people that didn't get vaccinated aren't going to tell you they're not vaccinated.
Yeah, why would they?
Personal view. So I think the travel community, the hotels need the travel agency community. They need them more than they've needed them before, and they need each other.
Right.
That's the real issue. Make sure your guests are aware of what the rules are. Maybe you're not going to get room service but your room cleaned every day. That's still not common unless you ask for it.
Right.
If you're there for 3 days, they say, unless you want it every day, we're not going to come in until you're gone. That's very common. Now, they'll provide it if you want it. But a lot of people say, I don't want you in my room. Stay away. But I think you have to, make sure the guest is aware of that. If you're some high-end property paying a lot of money, you want that option, you want it cleaned every day.
No, absolutely. And you also want room service, and there are still a lot of hotels that do not offer it because of the pandemic. And
absolutely. And even when room service is offered, there's issues.
Yeah, no, you get in terms of getting it on time, getting it correct. And then, of course, we have issues where restaurants in some hotels are still not reopened. So,
well, the restaurant industry is a different ball game. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, the ones in hotels and out of hotels, that's a complete disaster.
Yeah. Well, no, I just was a pretty high-end hotel in New York recently, and I said, did you open the restaurant yet? Because I'd been to this hotel before, and they said, no, not yet. I said, any idea when it's going to reopen? And they had no clue. They said
because they don't have the staff for it.
Yeah, we don't have. I said maybe September. I said September. We're in July. So it's kind of crazy. You'd think that these high-end hotels would try to reopen their restaurants. And then one of my partners was just out in Vegas, and of course they're opening up new restaurants and new hotels out there. And some of those are not fully staffed either. And so it's kind of interesting. There's still a backlog of getting the right.
That's the ripple effect, particularly for a new restaurant. If you have lousy service, does the person come back? All the studies have shown in the restaurant industry, and I teach a course in food and beverage management, says if I get great service and lousy food, I'll try it a second time.
Right.
If I get good food and lousy service, I'm not coming back.
Yeah. No, that's what happens, and you need trained people, that's for sure. Now, are there any new legal issues involving hotels as a result of the pandemic? Is there anything travel advisors need to be concerned about from the legal front?
No. The only thing that I would tell you, if the hotel is overseas and the travel agent has booked it, they have to make sure that the people have gone to the CDC website or the requirements for that country, or there could be issues.
Okay. Yeah,
that's the only thing. I don't think in this country there's really an issue. Of course, some states are so low, particularly some of the southern states. There may be issues going to hotels in that facility. I mean, Tennessee is very low. Nashville is a major area for tourism. The rates for vaccination are low, but I don't think that falls back on the travel agency community. Where it really impacts them if it's overseas or the Caribbean. Make sure their clients, you don't have to, because you could tell them something that's incorrect because it changes 3 hours from now.
Right.
They have to check with the CDC or the guidelines to see what the requirements are in that particular hotel. And for example, maybe the hotel is requiring you to wear a mask. Well, maybe you don't want to sit at the pool wearing a mask.
Right.
You got to let them know that.
Well, in terms of, so it is up to the travel advisor to tell people what the requirements are, or do they face some liability if they have not said either the entry requirements to a country or the procedures and policies followed by the hotel they've booked for their client? If they don't let them know directly what those are at that point in time, could they have a liability issue?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you got to be up to speed on all this stuff. You really have to, understand what each one, and it makes a job of being travel advisor a bit harder, but then it also means that you're kind of essential to the whole purpose, right?
Yes. But I mean, the good news is that the hotel industry really needs the travel agency community. Where you've really had an impact is we had some of the mergers in this industry. They've cut a lot of the commissions for meetings and things like that, which has certainly had a financial impact on a lot of travel agencies. But that's just because these companies are so big, they can do what they want.
Right, right. Now, is there anything else you want to tell our travel advisors out there today about what's going on in the hotel business as we emerge from the pandemic and what they should think about going ahead?
Well, I would just tell them generally, people want to travel again. My experience, at least my travel and what I've done in the last couple of months is it's not fun. I've been in hotels where there literally is no service. I was at a front desk where I was in line with 9 other people, the only one person working.
Wow.
Apologize, you just wait, you have no choice. So it's not the experience that you expected because coming out of the pandemic, all these companies are understaffed. Some of it is management, but a lot of it, they just don't have the employees.
Right.
Even when they hire employees, they're not trained. They're not trained in the operations of that particular brand, that particular hotel. So I think people just have to have an expectation that it's not going to be the way it was pre-COVID, at least in the near future.
In the near future.
You have to go in with that expectation or your client's going to be unhappy and going to blame you even though it's not your fault.
Well, that's also something the advisor should tell their client. Look, this is what the situation is like now, in addition to telling them, well, to get in this country, this is what you need. You need a vaccination, you need a PCR, you need an antigen. To get into the hotel, you have to make sure you're going to wear a mask, maybe possibly around the grounds. And then also warning them that service at the restaurants, at reservations and room service is most likely going to be a bit slow.
Yeah, or even if it's open. Maybe the room service isn't open. Maybe the restaurant's not open and it's not close to anything. Or maybe they only have, like a limited service menu. I think you just have to let people know what's going on.
Yeah, and that unfortunately can change a lot in just a space of a few days. I know that certainly for entry procedures to countries overnight in Europe, things change dramatically. And yeah, we are all very happy to hear that the European Union said, yeah, vaccinated Americans can come, but what they didn't sort of tell everybody at the same time that individual EU countries can set their own rules. Yes, you can come, but you have to do X, Y, Z. And this is the challenge. You got to fill out forms online. I just filled out something on Greece that they said you have to fill out. You have to have a test. Maybe you don't have to have a test. Maybe it's an antigen test, which is the quick one. Maybe it's a PCR test. And then that's in addition to the cards. And then the issue was you don't have to quarantine if you do all those things. And then, of course, there's the flip side is if, let's say, you didn't do them and you do have to quarantine. And that's the big issue that really had prevented travel. You could always travel as long as you were willing to hang out in the country for 14 days before you actually went anywhere. Absolutely. Yeah.
But, I was at a hotel in Seattle and had a confirmed reservation. I'm not mentioning the name of the hotel or the brand. And I wind up after waiting in line a while, check in, and they say, well, we don't have that kind of room. I said, well, I have a confirmation. The hotel is probably half empty. And the person checking me in, I said, can I see a manager? And she said, well, actually, I am the manager, and I don't really know how to work the computer system. Let me try to find one of my employees to find you a room.
Oh, God.
That's a major brand.
That is.
But she was honest.
Yeah, and at least she was honest. I guess that's the best policy.
They were filling in because they didn't have enough help. That's why the line was long, but they're doing what they can do. But you're charging me for a room. I'd like some service.
Well, that reminds me of the old Seinfeld episode, which has to do with car rentals, where he gets and he's booked his car rental, and they said, "Well, I'm sorry, we don't have that car, Mr. Seinfeld." And they said, "Well, you took the reservation, right?" And they said, "Yes, but." Do you just take reservations? You don't keep reservations? Then they go have a little conference and they said, I'm sorry, we can't do anything for you. And it just go in. And
that, unfortunately, because of the car rental market, that's not uncommon for you to show up with a confirmed reservation and not get a car. And there, because nobody else has a car, you're really stuck. You wind up having to use Uber or cabs and keep the receipts and go after them in small claims court because it's a breach of contract.
Right.
That's actually been a problem.
Amazing. And we talked on the earlier session about how they have a car shortage in the car rental industry because there has been a car shortage because they didn't have the chips for the computers to build the cars, which was amazing. You never know something little as a chip is going to cascade down to throughout the industry, and suddenly you don't have cars, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for delving into the hotel industry here for us. We'll have to figure out a next topic or where we're going to go next, but we've done cars and cruises. And of course, things change. As we emerge from this, hopefully some things will change for the better. We're all traveling still, but we have to put up with a lot more, aggravation and lines and lack of what we want. And the same goes for travel advisors who book, because they have to be aware and they have to warn their clients this is not travel. The age of post-pandemic travel, or as we emerge from the pandemic, is still kind of a interesting one for travel. Everybody wants to get back, but it's not going to be in the same type of form of travel that we're kind of grew to expect.
And based on the status of the airline industry, it's going to be a long time, particularly domestically, because they got major issues.
Well, we'll have to have another session on airlines as they move that around. We just had a big issue. American or something just went out and couldn't run half their flights all of a sudden because they didn't have enough people around. So it's just everything. We keep coming up with these issues, and I keep traveling. I mean, I came back from St. Martin. I think I went through 5 different lines at different points to do something. And I got on the flight. It was a packed flight, but it was packed. It was absolutely
everything's full.
Everything is full, and everything came back. I got back on time, but I mean, I for 2 hours I was in lines in St. Martin, and then I got back, and I got a line when I get back on customs, because now, in fact, I just had. I think they're giving out the old customs forms, the ones that we saw. That was the end of that after we had all those machines. And now we're getting the customs forms we have to fill out on board, before we get there. So it's back to the future, if you will. So
I had 6 late flights in 7 days, all at least 2 hours late, and then waited for my luggage at BWI for 3 hours because the airline said they only had one person unloading a MAX 8 aircraft with 175 people on it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, I tell you.
I won't mention the airline, but that's a true story.
Well, I'm sorry you went through that, but this is travel in the age of, actually the fact that we can travel in the age of COVID-19 is something, I guess, but we have to adapt our expectations, I guess, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Well, Jeff, again, thank you very much. We'll take up a next topic and in a few weeks, and we'll come back to you and we'll figure it out. But again, thank you for your time, and it's always enjoyable to chat with you.
You're welcome, and I'll have another column to you in a couple of days.
There you go. So you can look forward to another column as well from Jeff.
Thank you.
I am James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.